So I expect most of you have heard of Tiknot, Buddhist monk, prolific author, and peace activist. He's most often called Tai, which means beloved teacher. Tai was instrumental in bringing Buddhism to people in the Western world. The Buddhism he brought us wasn't just any Buddhism, though. Exiled from his home country of Vietnam because of his activism, he was also at various times disciplined and even removed from organizations he was a part of for advocating something he called engaged Buddhism. For Tai, it was never enough to meditate in a temple or a monastery, separate from the day-to-day hustle and bustle. Rather, meditation was a practice meant to support all of us in living a grounded, grateful, and active life, one where we make ethical and compassionate choices. I first discovered his work in seminary. One of my classes had Present Moment, Wonderful Moment as required reading. It was a thin, bright green volume with a simple line drawing on the cover and a series of simple mindfulness meditations inside. I was immediately taken by this approach to life, treating everything, but most particularly the simplest of actions, washing our hands, walking, eating an apple, as meditation or prayer. Bringing this kind of focus to the present moment, to life, changes everything. Now, I'm not able to maintain it for very long, but I found that the more I incorporate those moments of mindfulness into my life, the closer I come to being the person I want to be. Tai died on January 22nd of this year, and today's service will lift up his work and remind us of his legacy. Let's begin by singing.
Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out.
When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love.
Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out.
In our busy society, it is a great fortune to be able to breathe consciously from time to time. Our body and mind become calm and concentrated, bringing us joy, peace, and ease. While breathing, we can silently recite this gatha. Breathing in, I calm my body. This line is like drinking a glass of cold water. Feel the cool freshness permeating your body. Breathing out, I smile. A smile can relax hundreds of muscles in your face and make you master of yourself. Dwelling in the present moment, while I sit here, I don't think of anything else. I just sit, knowing where I am. I know this is a wonderful moment. It is a joy to sit, stable, and at ease, and return to ourselves, our breathing, our smile, our true nature. So let us sit and breathe together. The man the world knows as Thich Nhat Hanh was born in Hue, Vietnam on October 11th, 1926. He first told his parents he wanted to become a Buddhist monk when he was 12 years old. They made him wait for a while until he was 16, but at that point he joined the monastery at Tu Hu Temple, where his primary teacher was a Zen master. There he studied both Mahayana and Theravada Buddhism. Eventually he went on to study at the Buddhist Academy as well, and he was ordained as a monk in 1949. Had Thai been satisfied there, he might have lived and died in saintly obscurity. But he chose to move into the world rather than hiding away from it. He attended a secular university. He learned to ride a bicycle. He was eventually granted a Fulbright fellowship to study comparative religion at Princeton. Then returning to Vietnam in 1963, he advocated for the formation of a school to train Buddhist pacifist social workers to work with all those impacted by the war. For a while it looked like it was working, but eventually he ran afoul of the government and was exiled. Thai met and befriended Martin Luther King Jr., and King actually nominated him for a Nobel Peace Prize. He also met and befriended Christian mystic and Trappist monk Thomas Merton, and they became great friends. Thich Nhat Hanh moved to France and in 1982 founded Plum Village, what is now the West's largest and most active Buddhist monastery, with over 200 resident monastics and over 10,000 visitors every year, people who come from all around the earth to learn the art of mindful living. While Plum Village is the mothership, it's one of a worldwide network of monasteries, retreat centers, and individual teachers that stretches from Vermont all the way back to Vietnam. It includes several hundred monastics and thousands of lay practitioners. His body of writings is also vast. He published more than 130 books, most of which have been translated into English. There's obviously no way that I can offer you a survey of his work in the time we have here today. So instead, I'm going to touch on three key concepts: engaged Buddhism, which I mentioned earlier, interbeing, and mindfulness. And then I'll share a little bit about three pieces of his teachings that I personally have found meaningful. So let's begin, talk a little bit more about engaged Buddhism. Thai coined the phrase in one of his first books, Vietnam, Lotus in a Sea of Fire. This is the one that got him in trouble with the Vietnamese government, as it was largely a critique of the war. In a nutshell, engaged Buddhism invites Buddhist practitioners to bring their calm, wisdom, and insights from meditation and Dharma teachings out into the real world, to apply them in situations of social, political, environmental, and economic suffering and injustice. Thai believed and taught that the purpose of Buddhist practices and teachings wasn't personal enlightenment, but to equip people to help build a fairer and more peaceful world. Wisdom for Thai wasn't to be found in the temple or the monastery, but in the interplay between life itself, including suffering, and the discipline of mindful living. This was actually a pretty heretical stance. However, Thai felt compelled to take it because of his deep experience of interconnectedness, or in his words, interbeing. This is our second key concept. He writes, "About 30 years ago, I was looking for an English word to describe our deep interconnection with everything else. I liked the word togetherness, but I finally came up with the word interbeing. The verb to be can be misleading because we cannot be by ourselves alone. To be is always to interbe. If we combine the prefix inter with the verb to be, we have a new verb, interbe. To interbe, and the action of interbeing, reflects reality more accurately. We inter-are with one another and with all of life. Our body is a community, and the trillions of non-human cells in our body are even more numerous than the human cells. Without them, we could not be here in this moment. Without them, we wouldn't be able to think, to feel, or to speak. There are no solitary beings. The whole planet is one giant, living, breathing cell with all its working parts linked in symbiosis. An awareness of interbeing invites us, when eating an orange, to see in that orange the sun, the water, the soil, the farmer who tended the grove, the bees who pollinized the fruit, the worker who picked the fruit, the truck driver who brought it to our local store, and so on. And then to go beyond that, to acknowledge the rocks that broke down to make the soil, the ancestors of the farmer. And it keeps going ad infinitum. Thich Nhat Hanh continues, everything relies on everything else in the cosmos in order to manifest, whether a star, a cloud, a flower, a tree, or you and me. The 14 precepts of engaged Buddhism, written for the Order of Interbeing, the name for that network of practitioners established by Thich Nhat Hanh, actually read a fair bit like our 7 UU principles, both in content and in their wordiness. They're a little wordy. They include commitments to curiosity, learning and growing, and a promise to refrain from proselytizing. Practitioners commit to keeping their hearts open to suffering, to living simply, and to forgiving easily. The precepts call on followers to practice careful speech, to choose a life-supporting and compassionate vocation, and to work against oppression and injustice without getting embroiled in partisan conflicts. They ask for a deep commitment to pacifism, environmentalism, and physical and sexual responsibility. The precepts manage to be both completely common sense and, taken in aggregate, kind of a high bar. The 7th precept is my favorite. It reads, do not lose yourself in dispersion and in your surroundings. Practice mindful breathing to come back to what is happening in the present moment. Be in touch with what is wondrous, refreshing, and healing, both inside and around you. Plant seeds of joy, peace, and understanding in yourself in order to facilitate the work of transformation in the depths of your consciousness. This is the mindfulness teaching that was the heart of Thay's teachings, and the big takeaway I took from that thin green book I read back in seminary. When washing the dishes, this is mindfulness. When washing the dishes, pay attention to washing the dishes. This is from The Miracle of Mindfulness. If while washing dishes we think only of the cup of tea that awaits us, thus hurrying to get the dishes out of the way as if they were a nuisance, then we are not washing the dishes to wash the dishes. What's more, we are not alive during the time we are washing the dishes. In fact, we are completely incapable of realizing the miracle of life while standing at the sink. If we can't wash the dishes, the chances are we won't be able to drink our tea either. While drinking the cup of tea, we'll only be thinking of other things, barely aware of the cup in our hands. Thus, we are sucked away into the future, and we are incapable of actually living 1 minute of life. Of course, it's not about the dishes. Mindfulness invites us to give our full and focused attention to the sensations, feelings, and experiences of what we are doing, rather than wandering off into our imagination or self-talk. To be mindful is to turn off the internal commentary, to shut down our daydreams and our worries and our anxieties. It's to come back to the present moment, to breathe, and to notice. And as I said, I am a long way from being able to maintain that kind of focus day in and day out. But I find that even small moments of presence, full presence, enrich my life immeasurably. Thay wrote, people usually consider walking on water or thin air a miracle, but I think the real miracle is not to walk either on water or in thin air, but to walk on earth. Every day we are engaged in a miracle which we don't even recognize. A blue sky, white clouds, green leaves, the black, curious eyes of a child, our own two eyes. All is a miracle. Or as Peter Mayer puts it, everything is holy now. Now for a couple of teachings that impacted me particularly. The first is this one on mindful consumption. We can have a careful diet for our body, and we can also have a careful diet for our consciousness, our mental health. We need to refrain from ingesting the kinds of intellectual food that bring toxins into our consciousness. Some TV programs, for example, educate us and help us to lead a healthier life, and we should make time to watch programs like these. But other programs bring us toxins, and we need to refrain from watching them. I had never considered evaluating the media I consumed on the basis of whether it promoted peace and well-being. This insight has helped me make smarter choices, to walk that line that allows me to stay reasonably informed without sacrificing my mental health. The second thing that shifted, that was an aha for me, there's a passage in Creating True Peace where he describes his process of resolving conflict. First, he breathes and meditates and offers himself compassion until he fully understands his own feelings and reactions. Then he breathes and meditates with loving compassion for the person with whom he's in conflict. Only when he is suffused with affection for both himself and the other does he invite that other to tea, and for a conversation grounded in the deep conviction that both people ultimately want each other's well-being and happiness. Isn't that a beautiful model for conflict resolution? Last but not least, there's a quote I copied and put on my wall for a time: water the seeds of happiness. In the midst of a reflection on habits and the ways we can shift mindless, habitual energy, he pointed out that happiness is a habit too, and one we can choose to cultivate. He writes, happiness is a habit. It's a training. With mindfulness, concentration, and insight, we can free ourselves from feelings of restlessness and craving, and realize that right now we already have more than enough conditions to be happy. This is the contemplation of non-craving. Practicing mindful breathing and coming back to ourselves to take care of our body throughout the day, we can free ourselves from our regrets about the past and worries about the future and live deeply every moment, getting in touch with the wondrous, refreshing, and healing elements that are available inside and around us. You know, I could go on all day. There is so much richness in his body of work, all of the contributions that he's made to this world. If you've never read any of his books and articles, I'd encourage you to find some. And if you have and found it helpful, I'd encourage you to go back, take it in again, take in again the goodness and the soul nourishment it offers. For me, that little green book, Present Moment, Wonderful Moment, started me down a path of learning and growth that led me to other teachers like Pema Chodron and Tara Brach and Sharon Salzberg. The Buddhist practices they taught have kept me relatively sane and healthy and whole, evolving and changing and deepening through the years. And it all started with the first thing I learned from that little green book. Breathing in, I am fully present. Breathing out, I smile. When I'm able to live life one breath at a time, my life unfolds effortlessly, with so much beauty and power and grace. And so, let us bow. Let us bow in deep gratitude for all the ways in which Thich Nhat Hanh shifted and changed the world during his lifetime, and for all the ways his work healed and transformed each individual person who encountered it, enabling them to do what they can to spread peace and goodness in turn. So be it, and blessed be.
Our closing words are also from Thich Nhat Hanh. Imagine a pine tree standing in the yard. If that pine tree were to ask us what it should do, what the maximum is a pine tree can do to help the world, our answer would be very clear. You should be a beautiful, healthy pine tree. You help the world by being your best. That is true for humans also. The basic thing we can do to help the world is to be healthy, solid, loving, and gentle to ourselves. Then when people look at us, they will gain confidence. They will say, if she can do that, I can do that too. So anything you do for yourself, you do for the world. Don't think that you and the world are two separate things. When you breathe mindfully and gently, when you feel the wonder of being alive, remember that you're also doing this for the world. Practicing with that kind of insight, you will succeed in helping the world. You don't even have to wait till tomorrow. You can do it right now, today.
Let's go ahead and extinguish our chalice or our candle. We extinguish this chalice that it might glow gently in our hearts. May it light our paths as we leave this place. May it guide our way until we are together again. Thank you for being here this morning, for breathing, for resting in the present moment, for being a part of the Dharma community that is the UU Church of the Palouse. Sometimes I wonder, can it really be that simple? Is it really just about breathing? And then I try it and it is. It really is. So go forth knowing you're held in loving compassion, knowing happiness and peace is only a breath away, knowing that you are so very beloved and precious in this world.